Okay. I think it's important for those of you that are still here to understand the background for inviting Mr. Corbett to be with us. We had an opportunity to meet with Dr. Tom Price, who we all know has been pretty instrumental from Georgia, as well as Representative Joe Wilson. And after hearing the testimony, if you will, of Professor Alan Corbett, they said, you've got to capture this. You somehow have to capture this story, because this is not really what resonates on the Hill. What resonates on the Hill is fraud and abuse and all these problems. But I think we can go to Congress, we can go to our peers, we can do a lot of different things to tell our plea, but we can't tell the story of the people that we service better than the people that we service. And so when we begin to think about folks that we wanted to speak with Dr. Price and Representative Wilson, it was very clear to us that Mr. Corbett is who we wanted to speak to. So I don't want to steal his thunder. He brags enough about the service that he gets on his own. He doesn't need me doing that for him. But I think this story is repeated over and over, not only throughout our communities in South Carolina, but throughout the country. And this is the story that needs to be heard by the people making decisions who are going to limit access to the people that we service, because it is that competition and that choice that drives the level of care higher and higher. I think at some level we're all in this business to take care of people. We call them consumers, we call them patients, we call them customers, but to take care of people. And to that end, I'll go ahead and introduce Professor Alan Corbett and let him tell you his story and his home care experience.
Can everybody hear me okay? Well, first of all, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And I want to thank Dewey and others for inviting me to be with you today. It's a real pleasure driving out here. Never been to this hotel before. I didn't know who was out here. It's very, very nice. What I would like to do in the few moments I have available is to just kind of sketch the highlights of my life in such a way that you can relate to it from your end of your work. I think that would be the best use of our time together. And I'll start off by saying, first of all, I'm a post-polio survivor. That's the reason I use this wheelchair. I survived some epidemics of 1948 that killed a lot of people, and almost killed me, but I survived 2 weeks after my 9th birthday. And never went to high school, but I did graduate from Columbia High School with my class in June 1957. And then from there, moved to Washington, went to American University, got an undergraduate degree, first level honors, and then worked for several years with the Federal Aviation Administration. And then in '65, with my parents, my mother and father, who are now deceased, we returned to Columbia, where I began a career at the University of South Carolina. Now that's a whole separate story, so I'm going to fast forward all of that to bring you to a point that you probably can relate to better. In August of 2003, I was involved in an accident because of a mechanical failure in my van, in which I hit a tree at about 20 plus miles an hour. And it was a controlled crash. I tried to hit the tree on the right side of the van. At the last minute, I hit a brick or something, and the van veered to the left, and I took the full impact on the driver's side. So the attachment to my wheelchair was torn apart. I got slammed in the steering wheel, suffered a crushed chest, 2 broken legs, and a few cuts on the forehead hitting the windshield. So that accident very nearly took my life. I won't relate all of the gruesome details of all that. The consequence of that accident, on top of the post-polio, mind you, at this time I was working full-time for the Moore School of Business as a professor in information technology. So that was my job, that was my career, and had been for a number of years. And here is an old post-polio survivor, looked like I was back at square one again. And all of a sudden, I had to be acquainted with tube feeding and a tracheostomy. And if my voice sounds a little blurry, I still have a trach. There it is. I use a Bavona, 70 millimeter right here, and use a ventilator at night. So after narrowly escaping death on at least 4 occasions that I remember, and maybe more that I don't remember, it appeared that my career in life was pretty much doomed. And being a very strong person of faith, I just knew that God had other things in mind for me. So we began the long, painful road to recovery. And with the help of my beloved wife, Eileen, and a lot of friends, and Long Pharmacy, and I'm going to cite them specifically because they've been an integral part of my life now for, 5 years, 6 years or thereabouts. Gradually, slowly, and methodically, we were able to rid ourselves of a lot of the apparatus devices that I depended on, stomach tube, catheter, and so forth. However, the trach had to stay. All right. So what all this has evolved into is a situation in which I now, because of the long-term care that I get from people like you, I can now work part-time, which I do. I'm a professor emeritus at the Department of Management Science. I teach courses in information systems. And hopefully I'll teach another one in the spring, and maybe one in the fall and the following spring. Just see how it goes. Depends on the budget and my attitude. But in the meantime, I depend on the power chair. The chair is an appendage, you see. Just like you might wear earrings or a toupee or a wristwatch, I use a power chair. A $5,000 piece of equipment that is an integral part of my existence, my mobility, but also my productivity. Also, I depend on a $15,000 ventilator at night, not because it is life-threatening not to have it, but rather because it does provide for a very high degree of deep sleep patterns, which minimizes fatigue for the following day, you see. I don't think I'm telling you anything new. Bear with me here. So, I depend on that as well as the power wheelchair. And then there's maintenance involved with all of the supporting activity, of course. The trach has to be cleaned. Sometimes there are pressure wounds associated. Sitting up too long, that has to be dealt with, and we do that. But you see, without the support of, I'll cite Longs, if you will, as an example of the caregiver that's out there. First of all, I wouldn't be very independent in my own home. That's number one. Number two, I certainly wouldn't be able to hold down a part-time job, and I still pay taxes, by the way, just for your information. Still paying taxes. I've been paying taxes for 47 years. Would like to carve up a couple more before I fold the tent. And thirdly, productive in the community. I'm still active in my church. I serve as president of the Columbia Council of the Navy League of the United States. And if it weren't for the support system in place, I doubt if I could do that. That's a pretty big job as well. And there are other activities that I'm involved in, which I don't think we need to cite.